TCL is a proud sponsor of the 1500 ESPN studios. TCL, America's fastest growing TV brand. Minnesota Vikings, the NFL, football, yeah, football. Welcome to Purple Podcast.
Welcome to another episode of the Purple Podcast. Matthew Coller here with former NFL quarterback Sage Rosenfels. Sage, let's grade some stuff. You down to grade some stuff?
Love it, just like a teacher. All stars and A-pluses.
Okay, let's start out with the quarterback of the Minnesota Vikings, Kirk Cousins. We graded him after week 1. I remember giving him a solid B. And Sage, I might just stay there with that. I might just stay with solid B, where he's got some good numbers, and they're set up for a second half of the season where they can go make the playoffs, go win the division. That's what you asked for. He's helped them get through some injuries and tough times, but also he's been responsible for some losses as well. The Buffalo one specifically with fumbles, probably New Orleans as well with the interception. But I think you've gotten the exact Kirk Cousins that you expected, so I'll go solid B.
I'm going to go with a B also, and here's how I look at it. Now, I have 2 kids who are in high school, and when I go and I do their conferences, as I did just, I think, a week or so ago, the teacher gives you all of the test scores and all of the quizzes and all of the homework assignments that they have had throughout the quarter so far throughout the first half of the season. So when I look at those assignments of Kirk Cousins, I see A+, 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 and then I just see like a missed assignment. Like, what the heck happened there? Why wasn't that turned in? And that's like the sack fumble that gets returned for a touchdown, or an interception at the wrong time. He plays very, very well, at a very high level regularly, and then all of a sudden has like a bombed test. So I will give that I'll give that a solid B. For the most part, I'm very happy with the way Cousins has played so far. He does have his weaknesses. We sort of knew that coming into the season. And I think that as the season progresses, hopefully the Vikings sort of stick to the game plan they've had a little bit more the last few weeks, not throwing the ball 50 times and putting a little bit less on his plate. And I think that B could move up into the A- and A range.
So if you go through a lot of the statistics that go beyond just the fantasy stats, because we know that those can be twisted a little bit by circumstances, things like that. The Pro Football Focus scores have him at 8th. The QBR, the ESPN invented stat, has him at 12th. I think that those are about right, that he's been right in that category of not competing with Drew Brees for an MVP, but has been in the sort of mid-pack, and what happens going forward will determine where we ultimately look at this season. I guess the question is, Sage, we're always evaluating this. Did the Vikings make the right move in signing him? And at this point, I don't know how anyone could argue that they didn't.
Yeah, I think they made the right move, and people can go into the dollars. Is he worth the $28 million? I don't even think about that. You got to spend money to get the best players, and he was the best player available. He's playing very well. He's playing, I think, better than Case Keenum would have played last year in the same situation, against the opponents that they played against, and being behind in some of these games and having to come back. I think Cousins has has met the expectations of his contract and met the expectations of what Vikings fans were hoping, when he was signed to the big contract. So, yeah, I'm very happy with everything that has gone on so far. Obviously, you can play better, but you knew there's going to be some bumps in the road. Not everybody is Aaron Rodgers or Tom Brady.
So the running game, move on to that. The Pro Football Focus grades give the Vikings running game the 27th best grade, and I would agree with that as well, that their running game overall, because it has been absent Dalvin Cook and has had explosive runs occasionally with Latavius Murray, but not a consistent effort, especially since their offensive coordinator just doesn't really like to call run plays either late in games. It really hasn't been all that effective, but I do feel like it's improving, Sage. So, I mean, where should we go with this? Like C, minus right now with the potential. This is like your kid at the midway point having sort of a bad grade, but a few tests and then they could pass.
Yeah, since we're doing the comparisons here, I like this. I think it's a C minus. I mean, you can't be happy with it. It's unacceptable. It's not even sort of average or mediocre or whatever. It also seems like, again, if you look at the assignments and the quizzes and the tests, it's like they've only had a few assignments and quizzes and tests so far. They're going to have a lot more the second half of the semester, and maybe that's the way we need to look at it. Is that they haven't, for whatever reason, haven't decided to run the football. They haven't been terrible in their, if you look at their yards per attempt and all those things, it's not bad. There's no reason, with their yards per carry why they should be, 27th or whatever it is, in the league in rushing. I think they should be much higher than that. And I think they just need more opportunities. And some of the reasons, again, you play the Rams, you're going to be in a shootout. They got behind in that game. You play the Packers, they were in that shootout. They were behind in that game. You had to throw the ball a ton in the second half in the fourth quarter, in particular early on when they were in these battles, and our defense wasn't playing nearly as well. As we've settled into the season, I'm hoping that running game picks up and back into that B range.
So I did a little research for you because of something that you mentioned on Monday's podcast about the screen passes that if you were giving a suggestion, it would be to run more. They only ran 2 against the Lions. I went back through every play in search of screen passes. One of them was actually a very similar play to what they ran against Tampa Bay last year. And then there was the one where Dalvin Cook lines up in the slot. And those were the only 2 that used running backs in that game. And that is something that has to happen more often. I mean, Pat Shurmur had so much success with this. I looked it up. Jerick McKinnon averaged 7 yards per pass attempt or per catch that was thrown behind the line of scrimmage. So like 7 free yards for a quarterback where you don't even have to throw it very far and you get 7 free yards. And I had a stat this morning that Kansas City is averaging 10 yards per play that they throw to their running backs. I mean, the Vikings have the talent and they can do a lot of these things. They just haven't really done them this year in the screen game.
Yeah, and I think the thing about screens is, once you get them complete, you get your running backs in space. And that's where they were, that's their specialty. When they're in space, they can make guys miss and gain yards and get those big offensive linemen out in front of them. They're high completion, type plays. At the very worst, it's basically an incomplete pass and you move on to the next play. You don't have to drop back, and have your receivers run down the field 10, 15, 20 yards all the time. I think when you look back at each game, and maybe we should analyze this a little bit more as the season progresses here. Let's just say Kirk Cousins throws 35 passes. We should really break down in sort of sections each type of pass he throws. Was that a 3-step drop? Mm-hmm. Was that some sort of bootleg action or just a play action when he stays in the pocket, but there was a legitimate fake to the running back? Was it a screen? What are all the plays that they're using? Was it a wide receiver screen versus a running back / tight end screen? It'd be nice to break all those down and see, how all that works. And I think when you have, let's just say 35 passes, you'd like to have, 4 or 5 of these and 4 or 5 of these and 4 or 5 of these in all those different categories. And then up to 35, you prefer not to have, 30 drop back passes and then just 5, sort of alternate type of plays, which are really, usually very quarterback friendly.
So something that surprised me a little, you mentioned some of the play actions and things like that Kirk Cousins is nowhere near the top for most used play action. And that surprises me because that has not been his past. His past, he's usually toward the top in the play action percentage. Jared Goff runs play action on 38% of his dropbacks. Kirk Cousins on 20%. And, most quarterbacks are in the 20s somewhere, but there are a lot of guys who are way up, and maybe this is part of Cam Newton's success that's gone on so far this year. Cam Newton, 30%. I don't think it's been that way in the past, and he has 131 rating on play actions. So, Kirk has had a lot of success there before, and I wonder if that should be, but, they have to have a better running game to do this, but I think that there should be more play action for Cousins.
Oh, I think, big time. It's screens and play action. And of course, it helps to try to run the ball. But, people don't realize what play action does, for a quarterback. And I'm not talking about, you're in shotgun and you give a little token fake to a jet sweep or something like that. I'm talking about under center, turning your back to the defense to go and fake the handoff to the running back, sort of whirly birding around into the pocket and usually looking deep to short. And what that stresses, the stress that puts on the defense. One, the D linemen, they have to play run first. All right. So they're not just straight up rushing the passer up the field. So they have to play run first. So you get an extra like 2 seconds there of basically pass protection, which isn't straight drop back. The linebackers and the safeties who are down in the box, they also have to play run first. So they're going to step up and fill in those holes, which then leaves these sort of cavities behind them for wide receivers and tight ends to get to. And you can then take shots down the field because you've got that extra time as a quarterback. You can actually hold it, a lot of times 4, 5, even 6 seconds in the pocket sometimes because of that added pass protection. Usually you'll have at least one tight end as part of the pass protection. You don't have 5 receivers out on play action. You usually actually only have about 2 and possibly 3 with the running back as your check down. And so, I think it's a very valuable way to get the quarterback a lot of throws. They're usually actually high completion percentage throws. They're usually pretty good, protection, type throws. And I think it also helps out your running game. It makes those linebackers and defensive linemen sort of second guessing themselves. Is this a run? Is this a pass? You have to teach it really well, from your quarterback to your tailback being a certain depth and how they fake it. But more importantly, probably the way your O-linemen, have to block it very, very similar to the run, but also yet sort of be in pass protection mode. So I think it's a very valuable tool that the Vikings could use some more.
So completion percentage on play action, 76% and 8.8 yards per attempt. So that's up 6% and 1.8 yards per attempt from when he does not use play action. So that you can't.
And I think it actually could be, even better. We had when I was with the Texans one year, and this wasn't play action. It was our bootleg game, our naked bootleg game, when you're actually rolling out of the pocket after faking to a running back. We averaged per attempt like 10.5 or 11 yards per attempt.
Yeah.
Per completion, it was like 17 yards a completion. I mean, it was just, it was outstanding. And again, but you have to have that running game first, or else there's no point in having real play action because no one's going to take it seriously.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me that Kirk Cousins had a quarterback rating of 118 last year when he was running play action. I mean, that's been his history, and that's probably why the most innovative minds are using it the most, with the Rams on almost half of their plays. It's almost 40%. So I'd like to see more of that as the Vikings go forward. Situations obviously determine that as well. When you are in 3rd and 12, you can't really run play action. So that's part of your 3rd and short theory where you can use it all the time. Wide receivers / tight end. A-, I think, is my score because A goes to Stephon Diggs and Adam Thielen, and the minus goes to everyone else, except Kyle Rudolph, who's been Kyle Rudolph.
Lucky's 13 Pubs has you covered for the best game day experience this football season. Tons of TVs, legendary appetizers, amazing fresh half-pound burgers, handcrafted sandwiches, and a wide variety of other pub favorites. The drink menu is awesome, too. Huge selection of tap beer, handcrafted cocktails, and the best Bloody Marys in town. Seriously, these Bloodies are awesome. Try the Bacon Bloody, the Jalapeno Bloody, the Mother Mary, or just get a flight and try them all. Plus, Lucky's 13 celebrates Sunday Fun Day. Happy hour all day long on Sunday, every Sunday. Events and prize giveaways during games, too. Lucky's 13 has locations in Bloomington, Burnsville, Mendota, Plymouth, and Roseville. Having people over for the game? Call ahead to Lucky's and order some of those legendary apps, and they'll be ready to bring home when you get there. It's football time at Lucky's 13 Pubs. Find them online at luckys13pub.com. luckys13pub.com. It's the most wonderful time of the year, football time. And Lucky's 13 Pubs has you covered for the best game day experience. luckys13pub.com.
Yeah, I think the 2 top receivers get A's, and I think everyone else gets probably, B's, I guess. Maybe as that 3rd, 4th receiver, maybe not even a B. They haven't been super effective. There have been some mental errors. There were obviously the drops early with Laquan Treadwell and those issues, which does seem like he's resolved and played better the last few weeks. And the tight ends haven't been a a huge component of the passing game, the sort of the vertical passing game, the drop back stuff, as much as we'd both like. I think to have a real, and this is no offense to Rudolph, but a real, vertical speedy threat there would be nice to have as your second or even third tight end, as a bit of a change up. But obviously Rudy's always great in the red zone. That's his specialty. And so, yeah, I like sort of an A- there, A-, B+, obviously A's with the top two receivers, and then, maybe B's with all the other guys. And, it ends up somewhere in the middle.
Yeah. I mean, I think B might be a little healthy, just considering that they're forced to throw to Thielen and Diggs so often. I mean, I thought that they did a nice job adjusting against the Lions, but the Lions are also bad. So in a lot of ways, it showed you just what teams will do if either Stephon Diggs or Adam Thielen are out, and how important those guys are. And, it's funny about that Kyle Rudolph conversation, because, before the season, we were talking a lot about it, and he even was too, about how DiFilippo comes from Philadelphia, so he's going to, use the tight end all the time, and he used Gary Barnidge when he was in Cleveland. And it just hasn't really been the case with Kyle Rudolph so far this year. But when throwing in his direction, you can tell I've got my stats page up here, Sage. 118 rating for Kyle Rudolph for Kirk Cousins when throwing in Kyle Rudolph's direction. So that's another thing that, maybe they could start to scheme a little more. He's completing 82% of his passes when throwing that direction.
Yeah, I agree with you. A little more Rudy, a little more screens, a little more play action. Rudy's got such a great catch radius. You just usually put the ball his way and he comes down with it. And he has a nice ability to get initial separation. He's not usually a big run after the catch guy, but he does sort of know how to get open. He has a savviness to him. He's not super sudden, but he's sort of like a Jason Witten, understands the feel of what defenders are trying to do. And yeah, I'd love to see Rudy, get 3 or 4 more passes thrown his way each week.
One area where I would compliment John DiFilippo is using Rudolph against safeties and corners in the quick passing game to block. I noticed that each week, and I think Rudolph has done a nice job at that, and it's created a number of big plays on those short passes, because or even the one on the read option by Kirk Cousins. Rudolph was the guy blocking a cornerback back into the end zone. So he's done a nice job using him from that standpoint. The offensive line, Sage, this one's hard, because the first half of the semester, yikes, like D-. But the last couple of weeks, I think much better, in part because you have your center back, who is a really good player in Pat Elflein, and I have liked, for the most part, what I've seen out of the rookie Brian O'Neill at right tackle. So I think if I'm giving the grade for what they are now and not what they were in week 1 with Brett Jones starting, I would probably say a C+ maybe.
Yeah, this is one of those areas of the team where you sort of look at, again, we're looking at the grades of like my high school kids, and you see there's some absentees early in the semester. What were those absentees? Well, they had, players injured going into the season. It's been, a little bit of a mix and match. Every week it seems like there's at least one guy who might be out, and, somebody else is filling in. They've moved guys around, from here and there, from tackle to guard and guard to tackle and things like that. And so, this has been a work in progress. They have played better as the season has progressed, which is a very good sign. We both agree we wish they could run the ball more. We think these guys are more better run blockers than pass protectors. They're also great on screens. I think they do a great job of getting out on screens and knowing who they've got and making those plays. They're athletic guys. And so, I think that they're in a position where they're improving each week. They're getting better for the most part. I wish they weren't having to deal with so many drop back passes. That's hard for any offensive line. And it's a weakness with this group. So, Cousins has gotten hit a lot this year. He's gotten hit too many times. I don't believe it's all the offensive line's fault. I refuse to put it all on them. I think some of that is play calling, and I hope that John DiFilippo can find ways to help these guys out a little bit.
So when I'm watching Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady the other night, one thing that they do, it seems, is sense where the rush is coming from and just adjust their feet a little bit. Is that just a thing that some quarterbacks don't do? Because I rarely see that from Cousins. He takes his drop, he sets where he's going to set, and that's kind of it. Like, there is no shuffle a couple feet this way, shuffle a couple of feet that way. And I wonder if that's just kind of how he's always played. And some guys have different tendencies when there's a pass rush coming. But I think that's a big difference when I watch some quarterbacks compared to him.
Yeah, I think Cousins is actually more the norm. I think Rodgers is the abnormal situation, the way he moves around in the pocket. And he moves around different than Tom Brady moves around. He's sort of, he slides here, he slides there. He doesn't seem to be too concerned about holding on to the ball too long or getting sacked or anything like that. He almost has like no conscience the way he moves around the pocket. He is not concerned about any failure. He's just looking to, make more plays. And, most quarterbacks aren't wired that way. And Cousins isn't wired that way. He's been trained to be, I've always said it, he's more of an executor than a playmaker. Mm-hmm. When he tries to become a playmaker, that's a lot of times when he gets in trouble and tries to do too much. So I'm fine with the way he is. And obviously you hope that he would have fewer turnovers when he is holding on to the ball in the pocket.
So if we look at the defensive side, I wrote about how they've made some adjustments and how the Lions tried similar things schematically as the Vikings got beat on early in the year, and those things didn't work quite as well because the Vikings have made some adaptations. Now with Everson Griffin back, I think it's hard not to give the defensive line like an A or A+. The fact that they were able to make up for Everson Griffin's loss. Sheldon Richardson has been, for the most part, fantastic. Daniil Hunter is number 1 in the NFL in sacks. You couldn't really dream of anything better than the Vikings defensive line so far this year.
Yeah, but I will say this. I think where they need to improve is stopping the run first. Mm-hmm. I don't know what their stats are, but it does just seem to me this D-line is giving up or had been giving up some more push than in past years. Teams getting some just nice push along the interior. I think Sheldon Richardson is a really good player, but I think he does get pushed around a little bit in the run game. And when he gets double teamed, he's more of an athletic guy and not a hold the point type of D lineman. And so, that's one area that they could definitely improve on. And I think that then in turn helps their pass rush, which is, maybe one of the better ones in the league. I mean, even Linval Joseph can rush the passer, all 4 of those guys, or, even some of these backups that are rolling in here, they do an excellent job of rushing the passer. So if they can stop the run better in the second half, man, the statistics that they may have as far as quarterback sacks and hurries, they might break some records.
Yeah, number 1 right now with 31 sacks, of course, 10 of them coming in one game against Matthew Stafford, but they all count. So their numbers have just vastly improved over the last number of weeks since the Los Angeles game in every area, giving up fewer points and getting after the quarterback better, all those things, causing more turnovers, 10 turnovers over the last 6 weeks, I believe is the stat. The linebackers, I think, is a tough one for me, Sage, because I like Anthony Barr, and I think that he's a smart player, and he can be really effective at times. He could take over a game at times, but he's been out over the last 2 weeks, and I just haven't seen a whole lot of difference in the defense with him. I mean, maybe they can't line up Eric Wilson in as many different places, or offenses don't have to factor for him, but I think it kind of says something about Anthony Barr's overall value when they consider paying him.
Well, and this is maybe why they haven't paid him, all that much. And, I saw Gideon in there, and Gideon also, you can definitely tell he's more of a first and second down guy, a little better against the run, not a great guy who can cover, man-to-man and one-on-one and things like that. So, obviously Anthony Barr is a talent, but, you can't have great players at all the positions long-term. You got to sort of pick your poison, pick your spots. And it seems like to me the Vikings have chosen not to, have him be a long-term answer at that linebacker position for them. But he's such a good athlete. Hopefully he can get back healthy. I think he is very valuable to this defense, and he seems to have some up and down games, and I think he's actually had a fairly good year.
Yeah, sometimes I notice Ben can really be giddy and after it out there.
Yeah,
with the run game. No?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It was worth a shot. We're not grading puns here. We're just grading football players. Secondary. Moving on quickly to the secondary. I mean, it's really been about as up and down as it could be, right? I mean, Xavier Rhodes starts out the season tough. He's kicking flags at one point, and then he's got an injury. But, the depth that they've shown, Holton Hill stepping in and playing, Anthony Harris stepping in for Anderson Dejo and playing well, Jaron Kearse. This is a secondary that hasn't quite played as well as it did last year, but there have been more people who have performed well down the depth chart than they needed last season, and I think that says kind of a lot about how they've developed some of these players over the years.
Yeah, this has been sort of a more, secondary by committee, it seems like, this year than past years. In the past, obviously, and Trey Waynes, by the way, he's really becoming a really good corner. For how much man-to-man he has to play and then also play some of the cover two stuff, I think he's become a very good corner. Rhodes is not having his best year. He's also been injured off and on, and he's faced some really tough matchups, which aren't really his style, like the Rams game. That's a terrible matchup for him. Those guys are faster than him and smaller than him, and he's not, he's more built to get his hands on receivers and be physical. Well, those guys, it's hard to be physical with them because they're so fast and speedy. And if you make a punch and you miss, you're really screwed and you're behind the eight ball. So, I think the secondary all in general has played very, very well. I like the fact that, the way when Kearse does come in, it seems like he makes, plays here and there. He's also very good on special teams and even, Mackenzie Alexander seems to make one or two good plays almost every single football game. And obviously Mike Hughes being out for the year with the ACL, that hurts because he was playing very, very good football for the Vikings defense. So I think the secondary's played very well for the most part, even though they've played in these really, high scoring games. I
like the adaptation by Zimmer to use Mackenzie Alexander less, unlike what he has done with nickel corners in the past where, Captain Munnerlyn would play every single snap for the most part that they were in nickel, and now he's using Jaron Kearse in there and different packages, so Mackenzie Alexander doesn't have as much pressure on him. So, all right, before we get to our journeyman recap for the first half of the season, because I want to save the Bears for next week's podcast because they are just amazing. They're as good as the Cardinals or the Jets or the Lions, really. Give me your win total. Where do you think that the Minnesota Vikings end up this season?
What's the overall record right now? Is it 5-3-1?
5-3-1. Gotta love that tie.
5-3-1. I have them at 10-5-1 on the regular season. That's where I have them.
Wow. Okay. I think I would probably put them at 9 only because of the schedule is a little tough. You got Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, and Tom Brady on the slate, plus the Bears twice. I think that's a little bit of a tough draw, but the way that they're playing now, I mean, if you're getting that version of Everson Griffin every week and that version of Dalvin Cook, this is more like the team that we expected when they broke camp.
Well, and I don't think, just so you know, I do think this team gets in the playoffs. I don't think 6-1 gets them in, right? So, I mean, they're going to have to play some really good football, and then I think that with the new quarterback, the new coordinator, all these sort of the ins and outs they've had the first half of the season, I think they're going to start to sort of settle in here and play better football the second half.
Oh, yeah, you might be right. I mean, when you look at Atlanta getting hot and Carolina now performing pretty well, that maybe the second spot there ends up going to a wild card, and then it leaves it up between them and the Packers and potentially Seattle too. So that's going to be a really big game out there in Seattle. Okay, let's take a look at some of the journeymen for this year. We'll just go around the Journeyman League. I've got them here.
Lucky's 13 Pubs has you covered for the best game day experience this football season. Tons of TVs, legendary appetizers, amazing fresh half-pound burgers, handcrafted sandwiches, and a wide variety of other pub favorites. The drink menu is awesome, too. Huge selection of tap beer, handcrafted cocktails, and the best Bloody Marys in town. Seriously, these Bloodies are awesome. Try the Bacon Bloody, the Jalapeno Bloody, the Mother Mary, or just get a flight and try them all. Plus, Lucky's 13 celebrates Sunday Fun Day. Happy hour all day long on Sunday every Sunday. Events and prize giveaways during games, too. Lucky's 13 has locations in Bloomington, Burnsville, Mendota, Plymouth, and Roseville. Having people over for the game? Call ahead to Lucky's and order some of those legendary apps, and they'll be ready to bring home when you get there. It's football time at Lucky's 13 Pubs. Find them online at luckys13pub.com. luckys13pub.com. It's the most wonderful time of the year, football time. And Lucky's 13 Pubs has you covered for the best game day experience. luckys13pub.com.
Show some respect.
Listen, bud,
salute.
I've traveled every road in this here land.
It's time for Matthew and Sage to honor one of the NFL's great journeyman quarterbacks.
Do you count Case Keenum as a journeyman quarterback at this point?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay,
absolutely.
so-
But see, here's the deal: we have 4 teams. You have to play for 4 teams. So, he's obviously played for the Texans and the Rams and the Vikings and the Broncos. Now, has he played for somebody? I feel like he may have even played for somebody else somewhere. He also played like multiple times for the Texans and multiple times for the Rams. So they sign him and cut him and sign him back and all these things. So I think that he does fit enough of the definition of journeyman that he is a part of the group.
So he makes a lot of money this year for a journeyman, but he definitely qualifies. Plus, how about this? This solidifies his journeyman status, that he played 6 games for the St. Louis Rams and then 10 games for the Los Angeles Rams, back-to-back years. I
think he's like a journeyman who finally broke through and finally got some respect where most journeymen just don't. And so he's sort of in that category. He's sort of always a part of the fraternity. But he's the guy that he's paying for the golf trip, basically. That's sort of how it, or at least for the greens fees.
All right. Well, Case has had a very back to earth type of year. 11 touchdowns, 10 picks, quarterback rating of 83, which is much more like his rating. And as much as I really enjoyed covering Case Keenum and watching a magical season from him, I think what he's doing in Denver is pretty much what Case Keenum is as a journeyman quarterback, that he has to have a perfect situation and a lot of things bounce his way in order to have that great year. But it was lots of fun, and I'm happy for him that he got the contract. I just think. Well,
can I just say this real quick? And for those who haven't followed him as much this year, Case is throwing at about a 64% clip, which is good. But he has 10 interceptions, 11 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. He has about an 84 quarterback rating. So I think it's one of those situations. He's probably playing to more where he is, and particularly he's just now on a very good football team. Mm-hmm. And now they don't have Demaryius Thomas out there with the Broncos. And so he's now on a great team, and so he's not playing as well when last year he was on a very good football team and he played outstanding football.
So Case is sort of back to who he is, and but you're right about that team. Doesn't have the weapons, seems to have kind of a clueless head coach, and they aren't really running a lot of the same stuff from the couple times I've watched as Pat Shurmur did last year, and I don't know why you wouldn't when he had success with a lot of the play action, a lot of the screens. They don't really do that for him. So, but I think that the journeyman of the year so far is Ryan Fitzpatrick, and I don't know if it's close. 108 quarterback rating, but has been benched. That's just checking off a big box. Like a guy who goes crazy at the beginning of the year and then at some point ends up getting benched. That is the most journeyman thing to do.
Fitzmagic is like the guy who leads the league in home runs, but also leads the league in strikeouts.
Right.
He's sort of that guy. He's only batting about 260, but dang it, he's on pace for 62 home runs, Fitzmagic. I'm looking through all the quarterback play this year, and obviously mostly the backup guys. And Fitzmagic obviously is the one that sort of leads the way. I see Derek Anderson. I don't know. I guess he's a journeyman. He's played for 3 or 4 teams. Obviously, he's just more of just an old guy, but he's had long streaks. He was in Carolina for a long time, and he was in Cleveland, his first team, for a while, and he was a starter. He actually went to the Pro Bowl. Can journeymen go to the Pro Bowl in their career? There's an aspect there which may bring you out of it.
No, I think they can. I think they can once.
Blaine Gabbert's a journeyman, by the way. He's a journeyman quarterback.
Well, he qualifies
at this point. I would say so. He's been on 3 or 4 teams at this point. I would say so.
Okay, so here's my argument against Blaine Gabbert is that he's never like made anyone ever think he could be the guy though, right? Like don't you have to have like that little shining moment of like, yeah, this guy could be our quarterback, and then like, okay, he won't be, but
you
Blaine
at least
Gabbert
have to have like a game that blows people away.
Okay.
You get thrown in there and you have, 4 touchdown passes. Like you do some Fitzmagic stuff
right
in the second half of some game, and then people go like, yeah, but you're still the backup and you're going to go to the bench, and that's where you go. You got to have that little something special, a little asterisk of like, hey, you remember that game when he was playing versus so-and-so and he brought our team back?
Right.
Love that guy, right?
Okay, let's see if Blaine Gabbert has that.
I don't think he has that yet, and that's one is that he doesn't have that sort of highlight reel of like, this is why he actually was a first round draft pick, So Brock Osweiler, by the way, he I think at this point considered journeyman. I mean, he's really bounced all over.
Yes,
just in the last like 3 seasons, he's played for like 5 teams or something like that. So he's
when you get traded because they gave you too much money in a contract, that gets you close.
Yes, when somebody trades you and a second round draft pick just to get rid of you, that is pretty cool. Actually, that does not happen very often. By the way, he has a 91 rating this year, 6 touchdowns, 3 picks. He's having a really pretty dang good season for the Miami Dolphins. I think to be honest with you, if I was Adam Gase, the head coach of the Dolphins, I'd be playing him over Tannehill. I think Tannehill's not playing very well, and I think Brock Osweiler actually is. So maybe he's found a home down in South Florida.
Blaine Gabbert has only one game where he cleared a 100 quarterback rating in his whole career, and it was in a 32-17 loss to Detroit. In 51 starts in today's NFL, he has one game, or 47 starts. He has one game with over 100 quarterback rating when he started.
That is incredible. That is hard to do. Well, it's impressive.
It is.
It's impressive, and he's still in the league.
All right.
And good for him. He's probably going to be in the league a lot longer, is my guess.
Just a couple of these other ones that have played. Cody Kessler is borderlining. If you took over for a bust draft pick at one point because your coach got frustrated, you might be a journeyman. But he's got to be around longer. Matt Schaub got into a football game this year. Did you know that?
I did not know that. I wouldn't consider, I'll tell you what, Schaub's not a part of the journeyman thing. He started for way too many years in Houston. I backed him up for 2 of them. He started for a whole bunch of years in Houston, made a ton of money. Definitely not part of the journeyman fraternity. You know who's going to be someday, I believe?
Who's that?
Taysom Hill.
Yeah.
I think Taysom Hill is just on his way. And you could, I don't know if you want to call him a quarterback or not, but just the fact that he plays so many positions. I mean, he's like a tight end. He's like a receiver. He's like a running back. He's like a quarterback. He sort of does it all. He is definitely the Swiss Army knife of quarterbacks. He's not a journeyman yet. He's only been on, obviously, the Saints, these last 2 seasons. But I can see a player like him, whenever the Saints decide to be done with him, that somebody else picks him up and likes him for a couple of different things, and somebody else picks him up and likes him for a couple of things. I can see journeyman in his future.
Matt Cassell threw 6 passes. He is a certified journeyman.
Big time.
Like, at the top of the list in the NFL now. Geno Smith on his way. He threw 1 pass this year. He is on his way. He plays for the Chargers to journeyman status. He needs like 1 more team. That's all he needs after this.
I'm going to go ahead and see. I don't think McCown played at all this year up with the New York Jets. Has it been all the rookie? No,
not yet.
So
AJ
it hasn't been a great. It has not been a great year. When I got out of the NFL in 2012, there were like almost no. I got cut during training camp, and there was almost no quarterbacks that got hurt that year until like the very end of the season. Mm-hmm. And then I remember like the next year after I retired, it seemed like 5 guys were already out by like week 5. Guys are just going down left and right. We haven't had a ton of major injuries at the like starting quarterback position to have these backups get extended work. So, maybe the second half of the season, we'll see some more action by these backups.
You are right about 2013. Chad Henne played for Jacksonville that year. You also had Nick Foles come in for Philly. Jason Campbell started for Cleveland. Josh McCown played. Matt Cassell played here in Minnesota. There was a lot of journeymaning. Brandon Weeden played in Cleveland. Kellen Clemens got in for the Rams. That was a great journeyman year.
I retired 1 year too young. Maybe I would have been signed back by somebody. That would have been nice, but it didn't happen.
Wow. And Seneca Wallace got in a game that year for Green Bay. That is an elite year. So anyway,
that's right.
We've got time. We've got time to recover from the journeyman aspect. And all right, well, thanks for all the time as always, Sage. I know this one went as long as the last one, so I'm sorry for that. But there was no swearing on this one, so we did better from that.
This is true. But we can swear. We can swear.
I found out we can't swear. So
we can't.
No, sorry. Oh well.
Well, shucksy darn.
All right. Well, let's end it on that and never say shucksy darn ever again. And we will we'll try to do better next week. We'll talk to y'all then. Thanks for listening to the Purple Podcast.
Benefit from no ATM fees nationwide with a Columbia Bank Advantage Plus checking account. Use any ATM anywhere nationwide for total convenience. Make any ATM your ATM. For Advantage Plus checking, receive credit up to 10 surcharges or $30 per statement cycle, whichever is less at domestic ATMs not owned by us that charge a transaction surcharge. Maximum rebate of $360 for 12 statement cycles. All offers are subject to be withdrawn at any time. Member FDIC, count on Columbia.
The latest from the elections. I'm Tim McGuire with an AP News Minute. West Virginia Democrat Senator Joe Manchin, a target of the GOP and President Trump, wins re-election.
We've got to stop this absolute toxic rhetoric that's going on in this country.
In Tennessee, Marsha Blackburn keeps the Senate seat in Republican hands.
I think that you sent a really good message. Tennesseans want a conservative U.S. senator who is going to take Tennessee values and put them to work for you in Washington, D.C.
Democrats lose the Senate seat in Indiana. Republican Mike Braun defeating incumbent Joe Donnelly. In the House, Democrats have won four former Republican seats. The latest, Debbie Murkacel Powell ousting Republican Carlos Curbelo from a House seat in South Florida. That is the second Republican seat in the Miami area to fall tonight. And a Democrat has won election over an incumbent in the New York City area. I'm Tim McGuire.